The Olympic trials came a little too quickly. Whatever speed I had was 1966, and now it's 1968, and frankly, that Olympic dream was more of a child's fantasy. My gifts were in the ocean for long distances, which I found out later. But there was going to be one more 100-meter backstroke. After 10 years, 4:30 in the morning, every morning. And this race, the top 3 are going to go to the elite of the Olympic trials. And all the rest will go on to the rest of their lives. And I will never forget, I'm a teenager, and I'm walking down the pool deck, like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. I'm thinking of my parents, my brother and sister. They sacrificed so much because my dream was so much bigger than theirs. You know, myself, you know, I did 1,000 sit-ups every day for 10 years. 1,000 good sit-ups, elbow to knee, every single one. I didn't even smoke pot in the parking lot in high school. That's how big the sacrifices were. So I'm walking down the pool deck with this, you know, in a daze, and this girl, you know, most people, when they think of the, you know, the seminal moments in your lives when you need some wisdom, you need some guidance, you're at the bottom. We rarely quote presidents. We quote people in our lives, our grandmothers, our uncles. Well, for me, it was way back then, and it was a teenager named Suzanne, 17 years old with her own hopes at the 100-meter butterfly of making the games. And she came over to me just minutes before my race, and she shook me, and she said, "Diana, what is going on? You look like you're in a fog. This is the most important race of your life. What are you thinking about?" And I started in with all the sacrifices of my brother and sister. She said, "Stop it. You know, you taught us that you have a dream and it's up in the stars. And once you envision it, you leave it there and then you get to work. You get to work minute by minute and hour by hour, day by day, and eventually, even if you don't touch that final star, you're up there playing in the heavens." She said, "You're the one who told us that. So now it's up to you to get in the pool and swim the most perfect race that's in you, regardless of the outcome." She says, "You remember, we just watched Billie Jean King in that documentary on her at Wimbledon." And she says, she's reminding me that when she goes to Wimbledon, she never goes over and looks at the draw and says, "Oh yeah, if I get her in the quarterfinals, I gotta watch out. Her second serves really improved a lot." No, Billie Jean says she's like a cheetah on the hunt. When she steps onto the grass at Wimbledon, she doesn't know who her opponent is. She doesn't know who the line judge is. She doesn't know what the impending weather is. She is a cheetah on the hunt. And she's engrossed in the moment. She doesn't only play the ball, she plays the fuzz on the ball. She's the first Zen athlete. And as that ball comes over, all those thousands of strokes of practice and all that genetic ability are ready to come to the surface, and she steps into it, and it's the most perfect backhand she's got in her. If the ball comes back, she's at the net hitting the overhead, and 2 weeks later, Billie Jean's holding the Wimbledon trophy over her head, which she did 20 times. Yeah, Billie Jean did. You know what I'm going, and she has her hands like this, and she said, "This is it." She said, "This is it now. It's not as poetic as the fuzz on the tennis ball, but look at it. Look at that little half-moon sliver of your fingernail." And I am under this girl's spell. I needed her, and we're on the pool deck together like this. I said, "Yeah, I see it." She said, "All right, how long does it take you in the 100-meter backstroke to swim that little half-moon distance?" And I said, "Well, I guess that'd take about 1,000th of a second." She said, "No, it doesn't. Come on. Let's do the math. It's going to take a lot less than that." I said, okay. That's going to take 1,000th of a second." She said, "That's it. That's what it's going to take. So why don't you get up there and get to those blocks and blast off with the shoulders that you built and the heart that's unique to you, and swim that backstroke to perfection. And when you hit the wall, don't look around. Don't look up at the scoreboard. Close your eyes, close your fists, and say, I couldn't have done it a fingernail faster. She said, yeah. She said, I guarantee you, no matter what happens, you say it, you mean it, it'll be all right. So now, I'm off the big perspective. None of us do well, and we don't perform with the big perspective. We need to be in the moment, and now I'm in the moment of don't leave this much behind in that pool. And I blast off those blocks with these shoulders and this heart, and I have no idea if I was first or second, third, or eighth. When I hit the wall, I closed my eyes, I closed my fists, I said it, and I meant it. I couldn't have done it a fingernail faster. And I was sixth. Girls who were moving on, told them I'd be rooting for them. I went into the locker room and I thought for sure, after 10 years, that a flood of tears would come, even just relief. And I stood there proud. I stood there like that champion that my father told me about. And I thought, you know why I'm feeling this way? Is because it was the whole 10 years. It was the 1,000 sit-ups. It was the 4:30 in the morning. I did all 10 years every day so that I couldn't have done any of it a fingernail better, and I decided today's my day to march on for the rest of my life, and I'm going to do it all just like that. So, you know, I went on to life and love and the pursuit of happiness and school and all that, and a friend came to me and said, you know, there's a very eccentric sport of marathon swimming. These people go around the world, and you know, the world is 4/5 water. They swim the lakes and the rivers and the oceans. It sounded like that dictionary definition of a Nyad. And the oceans are usually cold, the swims are long. It's pretty much a masochistic sport, and that's why I thought it would appeal to you. And I thought I'd give it a try. So I was standing on the shore of Lake Ontario. It's going to be a swim across the lake that day. You know Lake Ontario? Well, you perhaps know if the wind has been blowing offshore from Toronto, that water can go down, down, down. And the day we're going to go in, it's 48 degrees. You never get used to it. You're allowed to wear a grease covering. But you're just out there with willpower and willpower alone to make it across. It's that I've known about the sport, but this is my first one, and now I'm realizing the men and the women swim together, which is unusual for the world of sports. And I'm looking over here, and the muscular Egyptian guys are getting greased down, and I realize I'm going to have to be like bumping into them pretty soon. And now the muscular, lanky Argentine guys are over here, and I'm just getting a feeling of what it's going to be. I felt the water, how cold it is. I've just been greased in 10 pounds of wool fat lanolin. And you know, that's a singular experience right there. Just go home and tell people you did that. And the best distance swimmer woman in the world at the time was Judith de Nyad from Holland. Judith was a butterflyer at the Mexico City Olympics. I knew of her and her great reputation. Judith was around 6'1", 182 pounds. She looked a little more like a tight end than a swimmer. And she took this moment, you know, right before the race to introduce herself to me. So she comes swaggering across the beach. And of course, I know the beach isn't trembling when she walks. It just seems that way. When she got up to me, she took an index finger and she jabbed it on the grease of my chest. I was so intimidated, I just stood there. I had a bruise this big for a month. She jabbed it on every syllable and she said, I hear you're a very good swimmer. That you're not going to beat me. And she went swaggering off. And I said to my coach, these people are animals, I'm not going in. And the gun went off, and I went swearing in Arabic like all the Egyptians, and got my place in the water, and oh my God, it was a cold day. And it was a long day. 37 hours and 38 minutes across Lake Ontario. And I finished third among the men that day, and Judith de Nyad announced her retirement that night. It was over. I was, you know, a state of hypothermia. I was taken to a hospital in Toronto, and my people put me in a corner of the emergency room. They went over to sign me in and get some help. They wrapped me in a Mylar blanket. And right then, a guy comes pushed in on a gurney, and he's in pain. He's screaming and grimacing out in pain, and I'm just kind of in the corner shivering like this. And they rolled him over, and our faces were about this far apart, you know, for a few minutes. And his people went to get him signed in, so the two of us were alone. And I think just to take his mind off the pain, he said, "What happened to you?" And I said, "I swam across Lake Ontario, and I'm cold." And he said, "Why the hell did you do that?" And I found out in our stuttering conversation that he had been in a cigarette boat accident on Lake Ontario that day, had spun over, and I found out later, in keeping in touch with him, that he had broken his pelvis, separated both shoulders, broken his jaw. I mean, he was in bad shape, and I could have asked him the same question. But it was interesting to me because that was the day we got talking, and I sort of understand that, you know, when you're in world-class sports, it's just the nature of the beast. You usually retire when you're pretty young. You know, you're lucky to still be competing into your 30s at that high level. And when he told me what he loved about that sport, what he was trying to say through his pain was that he's intoxicated with the feeling of being at that wheel, going, I don't know what they go, 110 miles an hour on the water, that he has to be so alert, so alive that he doesn't blink, and any little centimeter of a fraction of a mistake could be a fatal mistake. And he says to me, "I wish I could bring that sort of ethic that is my sport, the soul of my sport, to the rest of my life and live that way." And he said to me, "This is so, you know, painful and grueling, the sport you were in, but, you know, what is it that would attract you to it?" And I said, "Well, it's my first swim, but I'll tell you what I loved about it. It was kind of a microcosm of life. You know, you feel okay at certain points and you're cruising along, and then you have a crisis of stomach or shoulder or cold or whatever it is, and your people on your boat or your lifeline, you can never touch the boat, you can't get out, but you're communicating with them all day, you're getting whatever you need from them, nourishment-wise, inspiration-wise, and you go down the valleys and you don't give up. And you come back up the other side, and your courage, you know, comes to the surface, and then you get high again, and you feel like you can do anything, you can conquer anything. You've been in there for 20 hours, then you go down again, and it's just like life. You know, people go through divorce and sickness and death, and all of you know that it's just never without heartache and without difficulties, our lives. Have you ever met an 85-year-old who says, "You know, the whole thing was just a ball"? You know? Never had a problem the whole way through. No. We all have heartache. We all suffer. And I like that about the sport. I like to say that you want to get to the other side of whatever it is you're facing, you find a way. Yeah.